Okay, and welcome to the first The Complaining Cow Consumer Show on East London Radio of the year. So happy New Year. Now, today is National Pothole Day. And so today I have with me Mr Pothole himself, Mark Morrell. Mark, welcome and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. It's a very appropriate day. I've never been so busy in the last 3 weeks, even though I've had the flu.
Yeah, busy time. So tell us, how did you get started in all this pothole business?
I taught my daughter to drive, and she complained about a pothole on a road through a village called Farvino, where people were straddling the white line on a bend. I reported it to the council, then Northamptonshire Council. Nothing happened. I reported it again, nothing, and I chased it. Eventually, I had to ring the police, which I don't like doing, to get a 2-hour repair. I thought that was a one-off, and then I had other instances. Next thing I know, I've set up a Facebook group, and I'm in local newspapers, national newspapers, and I'm doing documentaries, one called Pothole Britain, where I took a tank to the Department for Transport.
So how long ago was this?
10 years this March. I only did it for 6 months to see what difference I can achieve. But it sort of ran away with me. I've been on every breakfast show. I've been in documentaries. I've campaigned and successfully had millions of pounds of resurfacing work carried out, thousands of potholes repaired, helped people with their claims, but it was never about claims really. But when you see genuine people, it's hard not to give them that advice, as you know, particularly when you've got, like I had a young student who was reliant on her car and had a damage to her vehicle. Fortunately, I was able to help her get her £200 back, which was a lot of money for her at the time. And then I've highlighted it, and I set up National Pothole Day about 8 years ago, and that's been quite successful. I know I was winning because I even got politicians out on that day filling in potholes. So the Department of Transport followed me, and I was very fortunate to have my evidence included in the Transport Select Committee inquiry onto the problems with our roads. There's a brilliant report called Filling the Gap, cross-party report that was produced, but government just gave it lip service, and it's sitting on the shelf somewhere.
Oh, like so many.
I would never get involved in
government reports.
I would never get involved in that again. I've been through all of their things of using petitions and all the right ways. The most effective way is for me to actually use social media, like I have been successfully, and issue legal notices, which I've done on a number of occasions to get works carried out.
Yeah, so tell me about some of the biggest stories that you've been involved in.
I did some work with Oxford Mail to identify with their readers the worst road in Oxford, which was Kennington Road. I went down there, surveyed it, threatened to issue legal notices on the council at that point, and got £830,000 worth of resurfacing work carried out.
Nice. What do you think of the barriers to why councils aren't filling these potholes in? Other than I suppose it's funding, but what else do you see as an issue for why they aren't doing what they should be doing?
Having studied it now for so long, the biggest issue is funding, but it's not only funding, it's training, it's not using the right materials, not using the correct equipment, it's poor supervision, and all those things are included in my evidence of that report. Repairing potholes is a waste of taxpayers' money. All that shows is that the roads come to the end of its life. Most of our roads are sort of 70 years plus old. They last about 20 years, so therefore it doesn't take a lot of working out that our roads need replacing. And it was reported that a third of our roads are in desperate need of repairs now.
So what would you like to see happen?
If I had control, I would have a fund available for central government, but I just wouldn't deal it out willy-nilly to authorities, because some you can't trust. I would make them do a full asset plan going forward for the next 5-10 years. I would audit them on that, and I would give money out based upon their performance and inspections. Because the laughing thing is, back in 2015, the government had a £250 million pothole fund. The councils had to go and do the self-assessment on their own performance. The higher they rated themselves, the more money they got. And of course, some of them these stories must have been written by Hans Christian Andersen, because I've seen some of the returns. That was never audited by the Department of Transport. That's just £250 million gone.
Yeah. Have there been any sort of freedom of information requests done on that as to what happened to that funding?
No, not really. I mean, I know that one of the Highways magazine was following up to find out from Department of Transport, about what was audited and done and such like. And I don't think they ever really got a true response for them, because they all play smoke and mirrors, to be honest.
Well, how do you help sort of people sort of empower people to do more things about reporting potholes and actually sort of doing things for themselves as well as sort of doing it? Because I know what it's like. If you help absolutely everybody that comes to you, you just don't have, time to sleep. So what do you do about sort of showing people about how to complain about it?
Using social media, I've encouraged people to use their online systems and copy in their MPs and councillors to get them involved. When it's a real serious case, I have got involved, and then I've issued threatened to issue legal notices. There's one at the moment on the A28 down in Kent that was appalling. I got tagged in. I've been helping them. The A5 I've got involved in because it's near me and it is an atrocious thing. In fact, I'm going to be doing some filming over the course of time and pushing to get that carried out. But really, it's making sure that people know that they can report it and use social media. Twitter I found is very, very powerful because you can tag in your MP, you can tag in your local councillor, and you can tag in your local media. And surprise, surprise, if I get tagged in there, which I just have to like it or make a quick comment, things seem to happen for some reason.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? And I mean, it shouldn't be that way as well. That's the trouble. It's that they're in fear of, we're going to get the media coverage, so now we're going to do it, which is just so wrong, isn't it?
It is, and I had a perfect example last Friday. I was doing something with the BBC locally, Oxford Radio. I put a shout on a number of groups because I've got a fair coverage on Facebook through groups I've got access to, looking for the worst road in Banbury. And the worst pothole was a crater. It was horrendous. It's going to kill someone. When I went to site, I rang Oxfordshire County Council because it wasn't one I was going to put through their online system. I got told by their emergency number I had to go through to the police to ring 101. So I had to go through 101 to report it to the police and waste their time for them to give it back to Oxfordshire. So then Oxfordshire to send a guy out to do a temporary repair.
That's just, I mean, so the system's broken as well, isn't it? That's the trouble.
Yeah, and their online reporting system's appalling because I found jobs there they're out for investigation back to 2020. We're now in 2023.
Yeah, and also, and the thing is, that's so short-sighted, isn't it? Because if they don't repair something that they've been given notice on, and then that case goes to court, that will go against them.
Yeah, I mean, the ways you win cases, I mean, there's some really good advice on your website that I've read, but really you need to prove that they haven't done their inspections correctly, or they knew about a defect and didn't action it, or didn't carry it out within the repair time scales. They're your big things, and that proves it. So on National Pothole Day, I encourage everybody to report a pothole because I have met some families of cyclists that have been killed as a result of potholes. You may save someone's life, injury, yes, and also damage to vehicles. And also it would help with someone's claims if the councils or highways authorities in general don't do what they're supposed to do.
Well, that's it. I mean, you could help just by going along a road that you're never going to go along again. If you report that pothole, you could literally save somebody's life, because if they then go and fill that in, then it could possibly. And I've seen some figures recently on that one cyclist a week is killed on roads due to potholes. I mean, that's just.
There was one last week, an 80-odd-year-old man.
It's just,
tragic.
I mean, it's heartbreaking, isn't it?
Tragic. One of the cases I come across was a guy who'd done two tours in Afghanistan, survived all of that, come back, hit a pothole, instead of going into the verge when the road was killed by a car. And behind that, that was actually reported by the police to the council 6 months earlier.
I mean, that's just incredible. Is there any sort of action taken against the council for not doing the work that they should have done?
Yeah, I mean, that case, the family got a 6-figure settlement, but it doesn't bring the guy back. Money's is irrelevant in them places, but you really have to be on their case. But, reporting potholes is important. But I found very powerful is this thing, because they're very good at defending it. They use a Section 58 defence under the Highways Act, that they can't know about every defect on the road. And I can understand that, because when it was put in 1980, there was more money available, and the local inspector was able to use a small fund to pick up and be proactive to avoid defects. That's gone. They only act on actionable defects now. So if they ride down the road and there's a pothole, but it's not at their depth of their criteria, they won't pick that up. Now, 2 days to a week later, that could be actionable defect. Someone has an accident. They would say they wasn't present at the time of the inspection, and that's how they get out of many claims.
Yeah, they can't get out of the claim if it's been reported, though, can they?
They can if it's been reported, and they say that it's been put out for a repair in 28 days, for example. If you have an accident in that 28 days, you won't win a claim. Some councils put it out to 6 months. Now, it's obviously going to get worse in 6 months. But it's not been tested in court as yet, because I think you could prove that they're not acted reasonably, because it's all right saying 6 months, but have you inspected it between times? If you haven't done so, have you done your duty of care? And also, they've changed the intervention criteria of potholes, and many of them are moving to it's got to be at the edge. So if the actual face edge isn't 40 millimeters or 50 millimeters, because they've got different criteria, it's like the Wild West in terms of what they can do and can't do, then they won't say it's an actual defect. So the nonsense is you can have a pothole that's, say, 30, 35 mil at the edge, goes down half a metre. They would argue under their criteria that they don't necessarily have to repair that because they rely on the edge. It's an absolute nonsense. It is like the Wild West.
That's ridiculous. Because really, when it comes to court, like I say to anybody that's taken a consumer issue to court, that it's what the judge would deem reasonable, what a reasonable person would deem as reasonable. And people are not, you wouldn't deem that as reasonable. You wouldn't deem 6 months as reasonable. So we need to hurry up and get a case to court, I think.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I use a wonderful part of the Highways Act in England and Wales. They haven't got it in Scotland, but we've got it here. It's called a Section 56. And that's a legal notice that a member of public can issue against the Highways Authority. It's not for the odd pothole. This is for a road that's fallen into pieces. So you've got numerous potholes and repairs. It's what they call out of repair. So you can report all of those potholes, don't get any action. You do a formal complaint to the CEO. If you don't get a satisfactory response, you can issue a Section 56 first stage legal notice that basically says, is this road maintainable at public expense? If it is, what are you going to do about it? If they then don't fail to come back to your satisfaction or come back within 28 days, you can issue the second part at the magistrate's court. Now, so far, I've actually issued a few of those. I've never got the stage 2 because they've actually complied. And once I'd issued the first lot, once I threatened to do it elsewhere, surprise, and work's been done. Because I don't think they want the precedent, and I wouldn't go into court on something I couldn't win. And I've got some ex-retired highways engineers that are willing to be witnesses. But again, like you said, my attitude is if I take photographs and produce enough information, it's the old omnibus one, isn't it? 2 men on an omnibus saying, is it reasonable? Is it fair? And some of the roads that I've looked at, no one in their right mind would say that they're fit for purpose. And it takes it away from this thing about intervention criteria. The road is out of repair. It's a totally different part of the Act. And they try to push it onto intervention criteria. And I pull them back and say, no, relevant. Don't want to about intervention criteria. The road is out of repair. It's public expense. Oh, by the way, insufficient funds is not a defence in law for this part of that Act.
Which is good to know. That's good for the public to know, isn't it? That they don't accept that, because that will be the standard response when we don't have the funds to do it. And people will, unless they know otherwise, as they hear these kinds of things, that they will assume, oh well, there's cuts everywhere, and that they've got to do that to pay for something else. So it's good to know that actually they can't use that. As
not acceptable. I mean, I issued one of those notices just before the pandemic on what was Highways England. I think they're called National Highways this week. They changed the name so many times. On the CEO, Jim O'Sullivan, for the A43, it was fallen to pieces. I got a response back from his office saying, regarding your complaint, I went back and said, no, it's a Section 56 notice. It's a legal notice. You've got to comply within 28 days. Otherwise, I'll see you in court. But then we had the lockdown and so that changed somewhat. But to be fair to them, since then, there's millions of pounds of work being done from Junction 10 right the way for up to Toaster resurfacing works. I get a schedule of their works. I've been out and had a look at their works being carried out. I've been invited out by the contractor. And I've got the head of media for that area follows me, and I've got a reasonable relationship with her because she's only doing the job at the end of the day. I don't be critical of this. And people out there trying to do some really good work. But it's the system and what's stacked against them, because this is decades of underinvestment. This isn't just Tory parties, because back in the year 2000, I'm sad, I read details, I like details. there was a Labour Transport Minister wanted to put in place a 10-year plan to clear the carriageway backlog, which in England and Wales, at that time, was £3.75 billion. Now, love Blair and Brown, they didn't go for it. Now we're at £12 billion. Now, if you include bridges and structures, because there's a report came out in 2019, there's nearly a £7 billion backlog in bridge and structure maintenance. So if you include carriageways, footpaths, bridges, structures, drainage, street lighting, I believe we're sitting with at least £30 billion total road maintenance backlog. Bit cheaper than track and trace.
Yes. And a few other things that we've seen recently in the last couple of months.
Yeah.
Having new PMs costing far more than that.
Yes. I mean, and I don't believe HS2 is a good investment of our money. That's been played about with so much, and that's 100 billion plus. And we haven't even got enough electricity possibly for our homes, let alone electric cars, let alone 800 megawatts to run an electric train that's not going to be used and going to be too expensive.
Yeah, and superbly out of time and everything else that it is and will be, and mismanaged, as it will be. Whatever your thoughts are, it will be well managed.
No, it's not at the moment. They're already overspending.
Yeah,
and they're behind programme. All these contractors do is they, and also to get it signed off between departments, they put in the price that they know is going to be acceptable. They get them to commit to it. Once they committed into it, it's the attitude of, oh, we've already spent £2 billion or £3 billion, so we're going to have to spend the rest. Well, your first loss is the best loss in business. If you ended up losing £7 billion, you're better off to lose £7 billion than go and spend what could be £150 billion on a white elephant.
With this sort of the potholes, you say you've got a couple of cases going on at the moment. Do you tend to see that they settle out of court rather than going through the whole process?
Some I do. I mean, sometimes you have to go to court. A good example was the M11 when it was. I think it might have been a Highways Agency or Highways England at that time. A guy got £1,300 worth of damage to his alloy wheels on his Audi, and they denied it, as they usually do. When we did an FOI, and I got a copy of what they call the inspection sheet, so that's time you started the inspection, time you finished the inspection, how many people were doing the inspection, what was the weather conditions and such like. It was done at 7 o'clock in a December morning, where you can't really survey a road because you haven't got light. You're supposed to do it no more than 50 mile an hour on that type of road. And I worked out the travel elapsed time. They were doing 80 mile an hour. When that was pointed out to them, the gentleman got a cheque for £1,300.
So tell me about the cases that you've seen that actually go the full way to court.
One recently that I did help the guy with, we proved that basically that their inspection wasn't fit for purpose because they'd said they'd inspected this road on this particular day, but we found out through a bit of research that the actual road was closed for major works, so they didn't inspect it and do a driving survey because they couldn't drive through it.
So it's downright lie.
Yeah. It's like the one with the M11. That was a cafe survey. So that was done in the cafe, wasn't it? That was never inspected.
And yet the authorities are still happy for that to go all the way through court, costing more money.
Potentially, because do they know it's being done like that? Who's monitoring it? Who's supervising it? Who's checking them?
Yeah, and then who's reading the paperwork when they get the legal papers?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just, that's what gets me. Like, I can understand it going to court. I can understand them settling out of court and seeing all the evidence and thinking, okay, well, let's not let it go all the way through to court. But if they do see it go all the way through to court, it's costing them more money when they lose, because if they settle, they wouldn't be paying those legal fees.
Exactly. Some of them are hell bent. There's a case with a guy that I know somewhere up north. I can't remember the actual council, but anyway, it's cost them about £5,000 to defend what would have been 210 quid.
This is mad, isn't it? It is. Yeah. You do wonder where.
A commercial environment, you settle it.
Yeah, I do.
It's public money as well.
Yeah.
In a commercial environment, you make a business decision. Say if it's going to go to court, because what you can do, with court papers, up until the date of go to court, that can be withdrawn at any time. So you see how far the person wants to push it, and then you quickly at last minute say, right, we'll offer you this amount of money. And most people will take it. There are some that will want their day in court, that principle, which is fair enough. But if they've already been offered the full settlement, they're not going to push it, and the court's not going to be that interested, are they?
No. It does make me sort of because you also think that actually if this was a private company and you were pushing for things like this and you were costing your company money like they're costing they're costing the public money, you'd lose your job.
Yeah, but it's not their money; it's public money. That's some of the problem. That is some of the problem. It's the
And there's
same with
no
government.
and then there's no accountability
No,
for
same with
people,
government.
saying actually performance management, you haven't actually done your job here. Here are your objectives to save this amount of money, and you've cost this amount. It's just it's madness.
Comes out of a different budget, comes out their legal budget and all that sort of thing. Rather than the old. At the end of the day, it's the taxpayers' money.
Absolutely.
And it becomes a bit of a nonsense. But if you look at government always come out with priorities. And if you approach the Department of Transport, they say to you, "Oh, we're spending £5 billion," but the £5 billion is over 5 years, so they're spending £1 billion a year. Right now, they actually gave £500 million pothole fund that's now included in there, but in the background cut £400 million off the general road maintenance budget. So there's not really that much money left in it after they've done that. So that's lies, damn lies, and statistics.
Yeah,
that's why I used the tanks when I did the National Pothole Day before the pandemic, and took the orange tank around Parliament Square, because we were hoping to catch Boris, but you could not make this up. We were actually on the way on the load loader from up in Northamptonshire where I live, because my friend's got tanks a lot. He does all the filming, supplies stuff for movies and all that sort of stuff and experiences. We were stuck on the Westway in traffic. And when we passed it, I happened to be on talk radio with Julia Hartley Brewer, and there was police had a pothole on the Westway that was slowing us down. That was on a national pothole day that year. I mean, you couldn't make that up. And I was hoping to catch Boris going into Parliament, but we missed him, unfortunately, because that would be quite a good shot with him. I wanted to use the idea of if our roads don't get any better, the safest thing would be a tank, and the gun was to blow holes in the lies, damn lies, and statistics of government. But see, I don't even look at that. There was a report done over 10 years ago that badly maintained roads was costing the economy £5 billion a year. And I was arguing up until more recently, if you spent £2 billion a year, every year, not just for a few years, every year, you would clear your backlog of road maintenance, and therefore you would actually save money for the economy going forward. They probably need 3 billion plus because of deterioration, cost of living now. Yet government pulling over £50 billion in revenues from road users, whether that's fuel duty, VAT on road duty, vehicle excise duty, or people call it road tax, but vehicle excise duty, VAT on parts and services and stuff like that. But they only put £1 billion back into the road. There's 250,000 miles of road network. It is the blood supply of the UK economy, and they can't even see that the economic argument of actually investing in those roads. They're great at putting smart motorways to kill people in, spending billions on that. In the meantime, they won't actually deal with a situation with the roads that people rely on. And with the cost of living crisis, can someone afford another £60-70 for a tyre, £200 for a bit of for a wheel? If it's suspension damage, I've had a guy this week contact me £1,000 worth of damage to his vehicle. If people are pressed and you're doing those, sort of hitting them with those costs because you're not doing and investing in your infrastructure and don't value it, don't tell me it's a priority, because they just come out with the same old platitudes.
Yeah, it's all very depressing, really, isn't it? On a slightly more positive note, where can people find you to get help and advice on potholes?
Well, biggest one is Twitter at Mr Pothole UK. I'm also on Facebook. I used to have a website, but I got attacked at that many times. I can't be bothered to have it up and spend all my time doing it, because every time I seem to be getting traction in social media, my website got attacked. So I find social media is where I tend to operate, and it's just being tagged in and being used. And I've done some in Newham before, and I've tagged in the MP over there to get some results. Interesting, because you border that area onto Essex. Essex up until recently are saying potholes are no more a priority because they haven't got the funds to do it. And then I read something last night, because I knew we were going to have a chat. Surprise, surprise, they're getting some extra money from government next month. So
Right.
I've tweeted them back saying, well, where's this money coming from? Are all councils getting it? But roadworks is expensive. If you look at that road that I got resurfaced, that was £830,000 just for that one road. It is an expensive thing. The material is expensive. There are some smarter techniques out there. There are some better equipment. I got involved with JCB with this Pothole Pro. that's absolutely superb bit of machine. British machine, very successful. All right, it's £165,000 to buy, a lot of money, Ash, but it pays for itself. The team in Stoke have got it, have done 3 years' work in 6 months, and they're doing really good quality repairs, not this cheap, shoddy work that doesn't last, that's costing the taxpayer money, even more money in the long run.
Yeah. I mean, I think we could go on for quite a long time about what
I could. I'm sorry for boring you.
No. I think we could go on for a long time. I say this to a lot of guests that I end up thinking, God, we could go on about this for a long time. Put the world to rights, put the road to rights, the world to rights.
Yeah. Well, I did. Some people have suggested I should be the potholes are, but I don't think government would want me in there because I tell the truth.
Yes, quite.
If you genuinely want to do something about it, put someone in place that knows it. I mean, I dug up roads. I started as an apprentice in the gas board in London, and I worked my way through and ended up with a senior manager. And I've won awards, won the most gold awards for reinstatement works for utilities works in the City of London, City of Westminster. So I have a bit of an understanding. But 10 years I've been studying it, hence I can quote things from back to 2000, and I'm seen as the expert. So if you genuinely want to do something about the roads and want to invest, then you'll be stupid not to tap into some of that knowledge and experience.
Yeah. Well, let's see what happens in the next 2 years.
Yeah, I might be dead by then. If I go missing, look for a crater that's been filled in.
Yeah, being so cheerful keeps you going.
Got to have a sense of humour. I mean, it's a very serious side.
Yeah.
Obviously, with deaths of cyclists and injury. But I started off pothole ducks some years ago, where I worked out that the particular plastic duck, if you put it in a pothole that's full of water, if it floated, it was their intervention criteria. I've used dinosaurs in potholes because some have been so long they're Jurassic. So I've used all sorts of things and to sort of the lighter side, because they're not the most sexiest of subjects, potholes, but they're important to people because on the doorstep at election time, it is in the top 3 things.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it's that kind of thing that sort of gets people looking at it, thinking, "Oh, well, I've not been affected by potholes," but when they see a duck in it or a dinosaur, it does bring what can be a dull subject more to life, can't it?
Yeah, and it's only going to get worse because of the funding and the issues we've got. It's only going to get worse, and we keep hearing about they haven't got the money. Well, no, you've got plenty of money when you want to. What if you actually invested in our roads? As I said before, you would actually save money in the long run. We need a long-term investment plan. We need to have long-termism in terms of our assets. I mean, roads, you can't hide the state of the roads. They can try and spin and waffle, but everybody sees them. But waiting lists on the NHS, up until more recently, but waiting lists and problems elsewhere are only a reflection of lack of investment across our society generally.
Thank you, Mark, Mr Pothole, for that. And I hope you find that really useful and informative for when you next see a pothole or indeed need to make a complaint. But if you have a consumer issue you'd like me to talk about, or a consumer problem you'd like help with, then you can contact me at helen@eastlondonradio.org.uk, and you can find me on my website, thecomplainingcow.co.uk, where you'll find lots of advice on consumer rights and topical consumer issues and saving money. And you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at The Complaining Cow, and you can find me on Twitter at Complaining Cow. And you can get 15% discount off my books, How to Complain, The Essential Consumer Guide, and 101 Habits of an Effective Complainer, with code ELR15 off the website. Thanks for listening. See you next time. Bye.